Welcome back, once again adventurers, to Let's Play Steins Gate 0. In the last episode, Rintaro said fairly well to Maho Hiajo, Alexis Leskinen, and Amadeus Kurisu, as they have all travelled back to Victochondria in America. And as a result, Rintaro's access as a tester to the Amadeus system has been revoked, as was, well, the agreement between him and Victochondria. But now, at this moment in time, it seems that we are getting another glimpse of Mayuri Shiina's past and the future. This was when Kagari was 6, so 4 years before the events of 2036. Which means it's 2032. She'd been living in a facility for war orphans and getting treatment at a dedicated clinic next door. It was a completely different place than the normal hospitals, which were overflowing with casualties from the war. It was an idyllic garden, shut off from the despair of the outside world, so that children could live in peace. Seems that this was when Kagari was being treated for her post-traumatic stress disorder, which is perfectly understandable. This is where she'd met her mother, Mayuri Shiina. Apparently she was a Class 2 caregiver at the facility, and was always very nice to her. You notice that whenever I say this word, I will always pronounce it as mum, M-U-M, instead of, forgive me, mom, M-O-M, which is basically the Americanation. I can't do the Americanization of the word mother with any justice whatsoever. But that's exactly what it means, Kagari. Apparently, it was the best moment of Kagari Shiina's life. It was impossible to express with words how happy Kagari had felt. Being Mayuri's real daughter meant that Kagari had become her real name. So that's interesting. It seems that Mayuri was the one who named Kagari in the first place. And unfortunately, with both of Kagari's parents having perished in World War III, we will probably never know this little girl's true identity. Kagari became Mayuri Shiina.
くっつかないのかがりちゃんは甘えん坊さんね
That's somewhat ironic coming from you of all people, Mayushi.
じゃあここから出られるんだよねママと一緒に暮らせるんだよね
But all what Kagari wants is to be with Mayuri. But it seems that that was a rather melancholic sigh there, Mayuri, even for you.
かがりちゃんにはもう少し治療が必要みたいなの
It looks like the hospital is still treating her for her PTSD.
そういうことなんだ。
あ、先生
Apparently that's one of the doctors. Kagari didn't know the doctor's name, but he was a nice old man who was always kind to her.
あと半年もすれば終わるからね。それまで我慢するんだよ。
Wait a minute. You mean she's going to be undergoing treatment for another 6 months? That's an incredibly long time.
半年もですか？この前のお話ではあと2週間ぐらいで大丈夫だと。
And it seems that Mayuri has noticed the inconsistency here. I don't entirely
そ
trust
れ
her
は身
intentions.
体的な傷の話なんだ。東京大空襲で子供が受けた心的外傷後ストレスは大人の比ではないからね。
Of course, then again, post-traumatic stress is a very, very serious issue indeed.
それに昨日の診断で分かったことなんだが、かがりちゃんはまだ怖い夢を見るらしい。
Can't exact. Oh, that is a very, very real possibility.
そうなの？かがりちゃん。そんなことないもん。もう怖い夢なんて見ないよ。楽しい夢ばっかりだよ。楽しい楽しい。
But Kagari is adamant. She really, really wants to live with Mayuri.
かがりちゃん、嘘は良くないよ。それでは治療はもっと長引いてしまう。
Now Kagari is a very, very sad
夜
panda.
中に怖い夢にうなされて起きることが未だによくあるのだと昨日話してくれたよね。
まあ、そうなの。
この子の脳内に空爆の記憶が恐怖として残っている証拠だろうね。
It would actually make sense if Kagari still had memories of what happened.
きちんと治療しておかなければ後で取り返しがつかなくなる。
そうですね。
Seems that even Mayuri is willing to accept that
と
point.
いうわけで治療を続けてもよろしいかね、お母さん。
はい。かがりちゃん、頑張って悪い病気をやっつけようね。
Even at the heart of World War III, Mayuri Shiina is still a kind soul, as well as incredibly upbeat, which is a good thing. Mayuri rubbed Kagari's head. Kagari felt so at peace that she could cry.
わかった。
But still, she's very disappointed.
いい子だ。
じゃあまた後でね、かがりちゃん。ママ。
Mayuri took her hand away, and instead the doctor took Kagari's hand. She was taken to the usual room. There was a white reclining chair, and next to it, some kind of mechanical system connected to a headset. Wait. I'm starting to get the feeling that you're not treating her for PTSD at all, are you? Mr. Doctor. And in fact, given what we know about Kagari so far, I'm almost certain, in fact I'm entirely certain
聞
of
こえ
it.
る。いつもの声。
The same voice as always. Yeah, she's definitely not being treated for PTSD at all. Instead, I believe that this is where it all started for Kagari Shiina. So she was being brainwashed in 2032. And to make matters worse, the trusting soul Mayuri was lied to. Completely taken advantage of.
君はママを守るんだ。この世界を守るんだ。そのために君は生まれてきたんだよ。
That is not the voice of God whatsoever. In fact, even though that voice is heavily distorted, it's a good thing that I'm blessed with a sense of pitch perfect. And I hope you are too, because if you were listening very carefully, that voice might sound familiar to you, adventurers, because it certainly sounds familiar to me. And that brings me to another point. That voice that we just heard could very well be a clue as to the identity of the mystery doctor whom we just saw. She couldn't remember when she started hearing the voice, but by the time she was 6, whenever she was worried, uncertain, or in trouble, she could hear it. It was always kind and strong, and it always cheered her up. But sadly, Kagari, that voice is not your friend. In Kagari's childish mind, she started to think it might be the voice of God. Yeah, this isn't ominous in the slightest, and by that I mean it is completely ominous. Since only she could hear it, everyone else said it was just an illness. But Mayuri was the one person who believed her. It's a good thing somebody does.
ママを守るんだ。だから治療を頑張るんだ。
If you call being unwittingly brainwashed treatment. Kagari's young heart was filled with the hope that she could someday live with Mayuri. But the voice has other plans for you, Kagari Shiina, and it has nothing to do with protecting Mayuri whatsoever. And this sudden transition means that we're probably no longer in the memory of the future, but rather in the reality of the present. It seems that Kagari has just entered a rather shabby-looking apartment with all sorts of debris strewn around. As soon as she opened the door, Kagari Shiina was struck by an unpleasant wave of heat. It was early June, and this was the first day to hit summer temperatures. It was hot enough that just walking outside could cause you to sweat. But this small Japanese-style room had thick curtains, and the windows were closed. And yet this same small Japanese-style room seems awfully familiar. The room was dark and cramped, and there were so many clothes on the floor there was no place to stand. Well, I know that Maho isn't one to talk with, given how shabby her apartment has been, even at the best of times. It wasn't just clothes, there were all kinds of filthy things. Bags with half-eaten snacks, snack bread still in them, half-rotted food packs, plastic convenience store bags overflowing with trash, all scattered around the floor. As messy as Maho is, I doubt she's the kind of person to waste food. That being said, I think there is only one person who would ever occupy this small room. And the area around the half-naked girl sitting against the wall was covered in bandages and gauze soaked with blood and pus. Yep. Once again, I wish somebody would hand me that phone, because I called it once again. It seems that Kagari is in the apartment of none other than Moeka Kiryu. As you can see, there were bandages tied around her exposed stomach, chest and limbs, but these too were soaked with blood. It seems that Moeka fared less than well against the Russian military onslaught in that alleyway. The room was filled with a sickeningly sweet stench, though there was no way to know if it was coming from the garbage or from her. Seems to me that even on this world line, Moeka Kiryu is just as miserably wretched as ever. I know in the past world lines that we were affiliated with her, and even on one world line she was especially close to Maho Hiajo. But those events have never happened on this world line. No, on this world line, Moeka Kiryu was back with the SERN Rounders. In fact, she never really left the SERN Rounders to begin with. She was still involved with them. But it seems like she's recovering, if you can call this recovering. The owner of the room, Moeka Kiryu, raised her head and looked at her, eyes filled with hope. So that seems to indicate that Mayuri Shiina is now affiliated with the SERN Rounders on this world line, which means that she was there when the incident happened.
M4 まだ生きてたか?
And that seems to back up that theory, because Kagari Shiina actually knows Moeka's rounder codename, M4. Technically speaking, there should only be one other person that knows that Moeka is M4, other than some of the other rounders working with her. The only other person that knows this codename is none other than Moeka's handler, FB, otherwise known as Ferdinand Braun, also known as Yugo Tanuji, a landlord of the building in which the Future Gadget Laboratory is being housed. When she saw Kagari, who was still wearing her shoes when she came into the room, her shoulders slumped, and her smile disappeared. And Moeka seems incredibly disappointed. It seems that she's realized that Kagari is not FB. And for Moeka to ask that question, seems like they're not as close as I thought. Then again, going back to Tanuji's explanation of the Rounders on the Alpha World line, the Rounders aren't always closely affiliated with each other to begin with, and that in fact most of them hardly even know that they're actually working for the same group. But it seems that Kagari was the one who rescued her from what happened. Although Moeka seems to be in incredibly worse shape for it. Moeka gave a painful cough and spit up some stomach fluid mixed with blood. It stained her thighs and the floor. Speaking of the Alpha World line, I'm now starting to get horrific flashbacks as to when we had to erase her D-mail in order to get the IBN 5100 back in our hands. I do not relish that experience in the slightest. Ugh. Fortunately, we don't have to do that again. We're not living that nightmare all over again. Her wounds must have opened up again because the bandages around her stomach began to turn red. Doesn't seem like you're well versed in medicine here, Kagari. She spent 5 months like this, with no treatment from a doctor. Well, 5 months in this pitiful state. Well, on the one hand, on these world lines, SERN has never been particularly kind or merciful when it comes to the treatment of the Rounders, because essentially, for all intents and purposes, the Rounders are nothing more than a bunch of hired guns doing CERN's dirty work. And regardless of whether they succeed or fail, either way, they end up getting cut loose. But still, you would actually think that Yugo in his role as FB would actually take the time to actually treat Moeka for her condition. Yeah, something doesn't feel right about this at all. Moeka had gotten into the gunfight with the Russian army and failed her mission as a Rounder. She'd lost 2 of her companions, and her target, Kurisu Makase's laptop, was also destroyed. They pinned the blame on her. She was wounded and almost killed. Even though failure is frowned upon by CERN on these world lines, once again, you would think that Tanuji would actually go out of his way to actually somewhat indirectly make sure that Moeka's health was much better. It was Kagari who saved her and brought her to this room. But if someone with a gunshot wound went to the hospital, the police would be notified. And for that reason, she'd never gotten any real treatment. I know the Rounders are a clandestine organization, so to speak, but once again, that unsettling vibe. Her wounds had become infected, and even 5 months later they still brought her incredible pain. Her terrible fever hadn't let up at all, and it wasn't rare for it to go from 39 degrees to over 40. Tanuji may be cold as FB, but even he knows what it's like to take care of somebody. After all, I may not like the man, but he is, I do have to acknowledge that he is trying to protect Nai from CERN's wrath. Which puts him in a very, very tough position indeed. That being said, I still don't fully condone his actions on the Alpha World line. Because on the one hand, Rentaro had reasoned that the reason that Tanuji had cut her loose on the Alpha World line was to try and keep her from being executed by CERN themselves. That being said, the reason that Tanuji recruited Moeka in the first place was because of her unfortunate dependency, which he actually manipulated on CERN's behalf to try and make her into a malleable Rounder for them in the first place. So, he's not necessarily a villain, but he's definitely no saint, I will say that much. But Moeka didn't seem very interested in her wounds. Typical shining finger, still holding on to your phone, your lifeline, your connection to the outside world, as you so eloquently put it, once upon a time. She was more interested in sending messages with the phone in her hands. She must have been sending more messages to her beloved boss. In the past 5 months, she'd sent almost 1,000.
どうして FB どうして返事をくれないの
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that, on the one hand, Moeka's failure would reflect badly on Tanuji and the eyes of SERN, but on the other hand, given the fact that the Russian militia was involved of all things, on top of Stratfor, who were in the building, by the way, searching for the laptop as well, it wouldn't surprise me if Tanuji was trying to keep a low profile, and SERN for that matter, because, as I've said many times before, they are no longer the main power players on this game board. The playing pieces have taken an entirely new arrangement because SERN ultimately have to deal with the Russians and Stratfor and Derpa. Not good odds, in my opinion. FB was Moeka's boss in the Rounders. Also moonlights as a CRT manager, by the way. Of course, Tanuji also moonlights as a woman who always gave Moeka orders via text messages. This was ultimately how Tanuji was able to manipulate her in the first place, through false identity. As such, Moeka treats Tanuji's CERN persona as a loving, caring mother. Would it be that Tanuji actually treat Moeka like Nai's older sister? Things might actually be different. Moeka worshipped her to a degree that far exceeded what could occur within a normal employee relationship. I'm so glad that things have not changed one bit on this beta world line. The shock of being abandoned by FB had hurt her many times more than her actual wounds. Given what we went through on the Alpha World line, I can certainly believe it. Kagari tossed the bag that she'd slung over her shoulder at Moeka's feet, along with 2 plastic bags. The backpack was filled with medicine that wasn't available without a doctor's prescription, and yet Kagari seems to have found some connections, some backdoor shady deals, it seems. Along with it was a whole box of illegal drugs used for the treatment of severe pain. Normally these would be kept under strict control at a hospital, where no normal person could get them. And yet, Kagari has them. Which means she must have connections, as I just alluded to. Both of the plastic bags were filled with canned goods and other things that Kagari had chosen, because they had the lowest probability of spoiling, given the state of everything in this room.
生きる気がなくなったら言うといいわ。代わりに毒でも持ってきてあげるから。
It seems that Mayuri Shiina is issuing her own ultimatum. But Moeka didn't seem to notice Kagari at all anymore. She was completely unresponsive. Yeah, we've seen her in this state. Kagari had gotten used to her attitude over the last 5 months. But she wasn't just going to go home today. She wordlessly reached for Moeka's cell phone. I can only guess what's happening next. Yeah, her reaction is just the same as it was in the Alpha World line. That phone is the only precious thing other than FB that Moeka has in this world. And without it, her entire demeanor collapses like a pack of cards, or a house of cards rather. Moeka tried to resist, but evidently she had no strength left. 5 months in this condition would definitely do a number on anyone. Kagari was easily able to grab the phone. It was covered in blood and pus, but Kagari forced it into her pocket without hesitation. Moeka started crawling towards her. It was like something out of a zombie movie.
勘違いしないで。FB から新しい命令よ。
Moeka froze.
FB の命令。
Well, that certainly got Moeka's attention.
そう、受け取りなさい。
Kagari took another cell phone out of her pocket. It was the same Japanese cell phone that Moeka had been using, minus the dirt and blood stains. The same brand. GG01. Once again I am getting terrible flashbacks to what happened in the Alpha World line when we tried to change that D-mail the first time around.
今までの回線はロシアやアメリカの諜報部に傍受されていて使えないわ。だから今後はこっちを使って指令が来る。
Moeka reached a trembling hand out towards the phone. And in an instant, she snatched it away and clutched it to her chest like it was her own child, treating it as exactly the same as the phone she just gave away, or rather, was taken away from her by Kagari.
FB はこの携帯なら
Because of Moeka's eyes, FB is her entire world.
多分もう来てるはずよ。
Moeka quickly opened the screen on the phone. When she saw the words on the screen, tears started to flow down her face.
M4 私の可愛い娘。
Yeah, that looks pretty much the same way that Tanuji crafted all of his messages to Moeka by pretending to be a motherly figure.
大変だったわね。私もとても心を痛めています。失敗したことは残念だったけれど、あなたが生きていてくれて、早く傷を治して、私からの次のメールを待っていてね。今度こそ任務を完全に遂行し、私の信頼を取り戻して。
I hate to interrupt Moeka here as she's reading this out word for word, but there's a bit of a contradiction here in this message. Your failure was unfortunate, but I'm glad you're alive. This time complete your mission successfully and regain my trust. Yeah, I don't know about you, but something about that doesn't ring right for me.
あなたのことを心から信じていますからね。私の大切な大切な娘 FB より
That message, Moeka Kiryu is completely broken. Not that she
わ
wasn't
ざわざ
already.
読み上げなくてもいいのに。
I think that's actually the most that you've actually spoken aloud ever, Moeka Kiryu, considering how many text messages you communicate with. Of course, this message wasn't from FB. Kagari had written it herself. Oh dear. Well, that was certainly an ominous revelation. But then again, I suppose it was kind of foolish on my part to assume that Tanuji was the only one who could impersonate a false identity. It seems like your SERN rounders are actually being hijacked from right under your noses. Your nose, Tanuji. So it seems like SERN weren't entirely involved in the raid for Kurusu Makase's laptop after all. Clever bit of misdirection. So does that mean that Kagari is actually in league with either Stratfor or Derpa? Or does Kagari Shiina have other intentions at this point, I wonder? But I can certainly say that things have gotten much, much darker. Of course, it goes without saying that if Mayuri were to learn all this, it would certainly break her heart. And even Kagari wouldn't want that. Keep someone at the brink of death for 5 months, then give them exactly what they want as bait, and you can easily put anyone under your control. Kagari knew this well. Of course she would, because after all, she essentially underwent the exact same thing, minus the death and the blood and the suffering. Of course. And the misery. Well, not entirely the misery, because I'm pretty sure Kagari would have been miserable without Mayuri for those past 6 months that she was being brainwashed under the pretense of being treated for her PTSD. The life suddenly returned to Moeka's face. She spilled out the contents of Kagari's backpack like a woman possessed. That is an entirely accurate analogy there, I'm afraid.
直したいの。FB の信頼答えなくちゃ。
And yet it will all come to nothing, Moeka, because sadly, you don't realize it, but your dependency is being played against you like a Stradivarius, courtesy of Kagari Shiina.
それでいい、M4。
Of course, it would make sense that, considering that both Stratfor and Derpa are already familiar with SERN's rounder activities. After all, intelligence gathering is their specialty. Kagari smiled, satisfied, and knelt down in front of her.
私が治療してあげるわ。包帯を全部取りなさい。
Considering that she's been like this for 5 months, don't think this is going to help as much as it should. I'm just saying. When Kagari left the apartment, the sun had set. No blue tape, no blue canvas over this apartment tonight. She spent several hours treating Moeka's wounds, which are incredibly infected. Her hand still smelled of medicine. It wouldn't go away for days, possibly. She sighed and put on her full-face motorcycle helmet, then went to the parking lot and got on her bike.
神様の声、そろそろ聞こえるかな？
I wonder as well. Also, the voice we're speaking of is not Kami by any sense of the imagination. She whispered. And then she rode off into the night, never to be seen again. Except she will, of course. She took off on her motorcycle and vanished like a ghost. But now we're back with Rentaro once again. It was almost July. The rainy season hadn't been that bad this year, and what little of it remained had already disappeared. Well, with that transition, I believe this is a good time to end the episode. And when we return, adventurers, I shall join you all up ahead in the next episode. As always, adventurers, until next we meet.